The Ghost Cult magazine interview begins with William Duvall. How are you today, sir?
Just fine, thank you.
First and foremost, as excited as I am to talk to you about music and art and stuff, sincerely hope that you and all your family and related band members and everybody is well, considering the global pandemic we're all going under.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, everyone is fine. Knock on wood. Yeah, been lucky so far.
Right. And I know you were personally impacted. You literally were leaving for tour right as this thing hit. You were going to tour in Europe, and
Hmm.
I appreciate the live stream. I thought that was really cool. And you've been, very still in touch with your fan base, which is really nice. But it's got to be like a very strange and disconcerting time for you've been, a long music career. It's got to be very strange and unusual for you right now.
It's challenging. I haven't been in one place for this long in 20 years, and particularly with the fact that it's uncertain um, how long everything will remain as it is right now. It's definitely presenting some challenges, but I just take it a day at a time, and again, I'm just glad that everyone in my immediate circle is okay, um, and just go from there.
Right on. I think this is just a topic that's just permeating everything.
Mhm.
I guess on one hand, as a solo singer, songwriter for the moment, outside of your normal band, I guess when things get back to normal, the first places that will open will be bars and small venues, if and when. So
Mhm.
that's a plus. You can go right back to touring if you're ready to, if the world is ready for you.
Well, we are rescheduling all of my European shows right now, and we actually just locked in a routing for 2021. It's not officially announced yet, um, but my feeling was that it would be best to push back to 21, and not try to. I made this decision months ago that I wasn't going to try to jam pack everything into 2020, um, just because I lost such a big tour in 2020. Um, my feeling for many reasons was that we would most likely need the time, the extra time to get everything together, um, both on a level of local governments in Europe, venues, and just the marketplace, and then just out of an abundance of caution for um, the health of my people who are traveling with me, and of course the safety of the fans is paramount. And so for all of those reasons and more, I made the decision to push to 21 um, weeks ago, and so now it seems like we may have a new schedule together, and hopefully that sticks.
Indeed, and hopefully, maybe the silver lining of this downtime is a we're all being a lot kinder to the earth, and secondly, maybe a little more, depending on your personal schedule, a little more time for you. You just came
Mhm.
off a huge world tour, dropped a solo album, went on a press and music tour,
Yeah,
holiday, another tour, a lot of
right.
dates. So you need a break, and as an
Very
artist,
true.
you need time to recharge in between.
Yeah, I think that's valid as well. I was definitely going pretty hard there, and for a long time. And again, for the better part of the last 20 years, it's been pretty relentless. Um, and so this is the longest break that I've had, and ever. I mean, probably. And and there is something to be said for that. That you do get to a point where um, you feel like perhaps you're not running your career anymore. Your career is running you. Your business is running you. And I was I was at that point. And again, I love what I do, and so my threshold for that kind of feeling is pretty high. Um, and I'm also very much a show must go on type of guy. So um, I've always pushed through that kind of feeling whenever it's hit me, and I've never let that feeling stick around for too long. But once I was forced to stop because of events in the world, it's like, well, okay, all right, I'll take this too. It's like, all right. So yeah, but I look forward to getting back out there, and I hope the new schedule is able to uh, stay in place, and I can get out there and playing for folks.
Indeed, that's all we really can do is just continue, keep going like we're going to get it back and reschedule and plan things and hopefully have plans and have things to look forward to, like come to see you.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a madness kind of world right now, but
Hmm.
I think everybody really appreciates that you're going to make the effort to get back overseas and hopefully here as well.
Yeah.
And and maybe another plus is that people will get a little more time to live with one alone, which is a magnificent record, man.
Sure. Thank you.
It's really helped me get through not just this time, but the time before this time when I
That's
was having
awesome.
some tough times. So I just really connected with this record and kind of renewed my appreciation for Comes with the Fall and those couple of
Oh,
songs.
right on.
And it is, like you said, it is a different animal. You were grinding very hard on this giant rock show, outdoors, theaters,
Hmm.
giant venues, giant lights, huge, great performances, big crowds, and then you dial it way back down to this very primitive, incredible, intimate experience of
Hmm.
just the singer and guitar player, kind of like how we all started in our bedrooms, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I wanted to get your take on kind of that kind of mindset. Were you planning the One Alone release for a while and then just sort of had it fortuitously come out right at the end of this big cycle?
Yeah. Yes. As I said before, it initially started with just a demo for one song, "Till the Light Guides Me Home," and that's what got me into the studio initially. I thought that, well, at the time, I was considering giving that song to another artist to do, and I was perhaps producing a record for that artist, and so um, I figured I'll go into the studio and knock out a quick solo demo of this one song so that we have something tangible to discuss in terms of what our approach might be to the record and for them. And when I went into the studio, the song went down so quickly and I'd booked an entire afternoon, and the engineer said, like, man, you're thinking about giving that away? I would rethink that, bro. Like, and then because the mics were set up and we were there and it was all happening, I just thought, well, I'll go ahead and lay down a few more tunes. I had a handful of Comes with the Fall songs that I always thought would present well in a solo acoustic presentation. So um, I went and played a few of those, and we had a good sound that day, and I walked out with 8 songs in an afternoon, and I didn't know what I would do with them, or if indeed I would do anything with them. Um, but I just thought, well, it's nice to have. And I hung on to that collection of songs for a while, and then as time went on and more Alice campaigns came and went, um, I thought, I've wanted to do something on my own for a while, and I struggled with the notion of putting anything out under my own name rather than under a band name. Um, but just a number of things, that sort of happen in your life, and both professional and personal life can lead you to get over certain hangups you might have had. And so that's kind of what happened to me. It was like, well, no, I think maybe putting a record out under my own name uh, could be something I might want to do. And if I was going to do that, this little collection of songs that I have that's just, performing alone like that could be the way to do it. It could be the best way to do it. Um, and yeah, so it took a while to come to that decision, but eventually I did. And I thought, well, 8 songs is good, but it's not quite enough for a proper long player. I'll go back in and do a few more. and and of course new things happen as well. I had the Veil of All My Fears was um, written on December 30th, 2017, and recorded on New Year's Eve, 2017. So that was kind of a quick thing that happened, and I thought would make a good addition to the album. Um, so it took a while to get there, but eventually I got there, and the One Alone album speaks to uh, all of my desires and concerns, at the moment as an artist, and it does present a very stark contrast to anything I've ever done, either with Alice in Chains or in any of my previous bands. And so that appealed to me as well. Um, I thought, of course, it could be risky, and it could come out and no one will care. um, it could backfire in a number of ways. I mean, there's all that stuff you have to consider. But in the end, I put it out, and I'm so glad I did, and I'm so grateful for the reception and the response from everyone, and I, I'm I am continually renewed by that support. I have to say, over this past year, it's just been um, amazing and essential to me. And so, yeah, I'm really happy. And as you say, the current situation in the world, as unfortunate as it is, um, it if it does give people more time with the album, um, then that part I will consider a blessing, Um, so, but I'm just so happy that you liked it, and that that there's all these folks around the world who write the nicest messages, on social media or wherever, and I read those things, and it really fills my heart, because yeah, this is such a personal record, and you know you can't get any more reductive than one guitar, one voice through an entire album from beginning to end. And not an overdub to be seen there, not a hand clap, not a background vocal, nothing. It's like, I thought, well, the thing I figured at the end of the day, when I was still considering all of the risks involved in putting this out, because I did have a close friend, and he said, look, and he kind of half jokingly said, "Well, this could be career suicide," We both had a laugh over it. But when I was mulling all of that over, the one thing I kept coming back to is kind of, it's a little bit of gambler's logic. I was like, maybe against the odds, but if I hit lucky seven, if it does work, if it does hit, then it will open up so many vistas and so many possibilities for the future. And whoever does like this record, it will be like, well, you really like me then, because that's all this is. This is the most condensed version of who I am that I could ever imagine presenting to people. And so if you like this, then you're liable to be able to come on a journey with me that can go to a lot of different places, and that will bode well for the future in every way. And so I thought it was worth it. I thought it was worth rolling the dice on that one. And again, I'm just so grateful that it turned out okay.
Oh, it's more than okay, and I'm glad you rolled that dice, man. A lot to unpack. I like that you talked about different things, and addressing certain feelings and issues. There's definitely a lot of I don't want to say romance, but there's a lot of love, whether it's unrequited or
Mhm.
just regretful, or just intimating things that have happened to you, or that you're singing about if you put yourself
Mhm.
in someone else's shoes. So it's weird. We live in a very strange time where it's either like hyper masculinity, or
Mhm.
the opposite. So it's really cool to to be a grown ass man in this age, and be okay to be vulnerable. It's
Right.
something that people are not comfortable with,
Yeah.
and that we're not allowed to have anymore. Like, and I don't mean in a gross way. I mean
Yeah.
like in a natural, normal way. Like, oh, I have feelings and I'm allowed to share them. So I really appreciate that you sing about
Right
these
on.
things. Mental health stuff also, like just
Yeah.
emotional things. Like it's such a taboo to talk about
Yeah.
these things with a man. It seems
Yeah.
insane, but it's true. And I love whenever I get an opportunity to bring this up with anybody, I make sure to because I think it's something that other artists need to be comfortable with. And it's great that you showed that side of yourself.
Right on, man. Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a lot of stigmas and negativity attached to some of that stuff. I mean, uh, we all carry some of that baggage, because of the way we're raised. And you know, I'm fortunate in that um, music has always provided some sort of an outlet for me with regard to rage, anger, sadness. Insecurity, and that's been my saving grace since I was a kid. And so, um, yeah, if anything that I do musically can help someone else, um, because we've all had those private moments with a record, where it's just like, man, I really need to hear this right now, and whether it's you're driving in your car and you play something that just hits you, or you're at your home and with the headphones on. We've all had those moments, and you know to provide a moment like that for somebody is the greatest honor that I could imagine. uh you know in my vocation, that's about as good as it gets. And so yeah, I mean, I grew up on a lot of different kinds of music, fortunately, and including some music that gave other guys an outlet to be vulnerable in their way, and in their time, whether it was a cat like Smokey Robinson, or you know, or Prince, or any number, all the blues singers, the old country blues guys, um, living under the most horrendous conditions imaginable, um, and leaving behind this legacy of recordings that I can draw from nearly 100 years later. Like that kind of thing is part of the miracle of music for me. And so I feel like it's kind of like, I hate to use a word like this, but I feel like it's almost my birthright to not only acknowledge and draw from that, but use it and pay it forward, you know. And so again, with an album like One Alone, it really is um, sort of a pass fail kind of a test. It's like, it just is what it is, so much so that it draws some lines, and and um and so again, for everyone that has picked up on it and really dug it, I'm eternally grateful. And I feel like the record will hopefully stand the test of time because of the very nature of the record. You know what I mean? Because of how sparse it is, and how true it is, and how pure it is, and all of those things. I think will allow it to remain kind of an important part of my catalog. At least I hope. You
Right
know.
on. I also want to shout out. I don't know whether it's just my ear and what my brain goes to, but when you hit a certain range between
Mhm.
your voice and the guitar work, I hear a lot of like Curtis Mayfield, Trouble Man, like a lot of
Oh,
like
great,
mournful soul kind of stuff, not like
great.
heavy, but like
Oh, that's great.
maybe done your way. So respect there. Also, I love that.
Fantastic. I
Love
love
the shit out to
Curtis.
Prince. I could listen to that Prince bootleg acoustic set all day long.
Hmm.
Um, we got robbed as far as I'm concerned with him. He had many, many more years and years to
Certainly,
do.
certainly, yes, yes, indeed. Yeah, I was actually at Prince's last show ever,
Wow.
and yeah, and to think that he would be gone a week later is unimaginable. It still is, um, you know. And then it was like we lost Cornell right after that. It's, you know, just yeah, it's just been a brutal few years here, and you know, if I think any and all of us who are out here trying to do this, it just it forces you to reconcile with the fact that tomorrow is not guaranteed to any one of us, and whatever it is you were doing in your life, um, those kinds of shocks can be a real like wake up call to step up your game or to maintain your game if you're already operating at a high level, not to drop, you know, and to just always be more conscious of how you're moving through the world, and um, what you stand to leave here when you go, whenever that is. And so yeah, I have to I would I'd have to say that those kinds of things also were part of the engine driving the decision making process around whether to release an album like One Alone. Um, you know, certainly, you know, losing Prince and losing Cornell, and both of these guys who I liked an awful, I mean, just I admired tremendously, and both guys who could perform in a variety of settings, including just doing a one man show. Um, it was definitely kind of as much as it was a shock, and as much as it caused a lot of grief, um, it was also sort of uh, a push, if you will, like a little bit of a push to, like, no, you know, maybe you could just go ahead and put those songs out, you know, just as they are. Don't do anything to them. Maybe you could go out and play some shows like that. Um, Prove it to yourself. Prove it to anyone else who cares, um, and see what happens. And whatever happens, at least you did it. At least you tried. And so, yeah, I mean, it there was a little bit of like trying to the create the art that you want to see in the world, I guess, you know. And so yeah, I mean, yeah, it was definitely, that was part of the decision making process and part of the motivation for sure. Some of the losses that we've suffered in the last few years.
Right on. I think at the same time, it's still a very hopeful record. Obviously,
Yeah.
like "Leads Me Home" is very, even though it's got some sadness, it's very uplifting. I don't know if it's like the strange, you know, dichotomy of the chords and then you're singing, but also like it is hopeful. The chorus is very uplifting, and there are a lot of like very uplifting songs. Like I didn't imagine that "So Cruel" would make me feel good later on. It was like, oh, this is a sad kind of ditty, and now I hear it in new light because the "Comes with the Fall" records are really well done, and there's a lot of cool ear candy and like interesting guitar stuff on there, and then you hear them just stripped down and you get like a new life on those
Well,
songs,
that's
right? So
awesome.
I think there is kind of like an uplifting overall feeling. It's not just a super sad record sometimes, but
Right.
I think it's uplifting overall.
I'm glad you said that, and I'm happy to hear that. Um, yeah, I mean, hopefully that that comes through. I feel like there's no. At what point is there without without hope? There is none. So I mean, you have to have. I mean, the whole thing for me, even through some of the most intense raging music that I've ever done or that I've ever heard and enjoyed as a listener, was that it was helping you work through some things so that you could come out the other side of it and be better for it. And so, you know, I mean, even the hardcore stuff when I was a kid was all about that, right? And anything, you know, all of the romantic music by anyone that I've ever dug, whether it was Joni Mitchell or like I said, Smokey or Prince or anyone like that. It was always with the same uh, end goal, you know, like I hear this, I take this in, it helps me process some things, and then I come out better for it. I mean, music can change your chemistry, you know. I mean, I've had that happen to me many, many times, and I'm sure so many, like anyone who hears this can relate to that. I mean, you can walk into a venue and literally walk out a different person in a lot of ways. And so yeah, hope is where it's at. And so the light guides me home, that was the whole sort of genesis and purpose of that song. It came very quickly. I wrote it in one sitting. It was one of those songs that was playing in my mind like a complete record, and I just had to grab the guitar fast enough to catch up to it and not lose it. um, and Yeah, it was about acknowledging mistakes, but um, with an eye toward moving forward into a better existence. And, you know, and even the video for that song, it was about that. I mean, I was trying to get across the idea of someone who's on the move a lot and goes through some changes, you know, and, you know, because, you know, those of us who are fortunate enough to do music for a living, um, that is one of the occupational hazards, is you're on the move all the time, and a lot of times you're leaving behind folks, you know, who in your personal life, um, who are, you know, you're trying to maintain these relationships from a distance, and you're trying to come return home into a situation that may be very different than when you left it, for whatever reason, because of whatever that person or people you're leaving behind are going through, you know, and have been going through while you're gone, you know. And even with all of the devices that we have to stay in touch now that we didn't have even a few years ago, like we're talking on a video phone right now. I mean, that's the Star Trek to me when I was growing up. But um, even with all those devices, distance is distance, you know, and absence is absence. And so you know, that song "To the Light Guides Me Home" was addressing some of that, and of course, it hopefully in a way that people who aren't in touring rock bands can relate to, right? I mean, because again, absence is absence, no matter why it's happening, and so, you know, but it's this idea of you're trying to maintain these relationships, and maybe some of them don't survive, and if they don't, because of your mistakes or mistakes on the other side, both, whatever. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not so much about blaming as it is just um, trying to keep your own side of the street as clean as possible, right? I mean, just like, okay, this happened. I mean, I will acknowledge this. I will own this, and hopefully, I can move on to a better way of being. And then the video, it gets across hopefully this idea of a person who's on the move through a lot of different situations, and then they return home, and it's this idea of like they get to the door, and you know, I get to the door, the gal opens up the door, and it's like, what's gonna happen now? You know what I mean? It's like, hopefully we're all good, you know, hopefully we can get to good. And you know, but it was a simple visual metaphor for, you know, for that idea. And so yeah, hope is the whole thing. And through all of those songs, I hope that that is the through line, you know, even if it's sad or whatever. It's like, well, hopefully there's some catharsis there, and then we move on to the next thing.
Nice. Uh, just a few more questions for you, man. I want to give you back your day. I do want to pivot and talk about the live performances solo. You walked in there in New York, and I heard the same thing about LA. Pretty much like a gunslinger, two guitars, a couple of pieces of paper, and a stool. I mean, you just, that's what you do, right? Solo artist.
Hmm.
William. So it's a new, it's not new, but it's new for us to
Yeah.
see you really in that form. And I like that, one, you honored your whole career and a lot of interesting choices of covers. But
Hmm.
also, I think the fans, at least in the crowd I was in, was really great. And that could turn into a situation where people are just shouting out like Alice in Chains names. And I think there was one kid with a Rainier Fog shirt on, but everybody was chill. And you did play, I think, Never Fade. And
Hmm.
but generally speaking, like people were like there to honor you, which
Hmm.
I think was really nice, probably appropriate, thankfully.
Oh, yeah. It was incredible. Yeah. All of the shows were pretty much like that. I mean, it was just, again, I particularly with, again, having been forced to be stationary for so long, I look back on just a few months ago almost as though it was another life. Like, it was like, um, but yeah, that American tour was miraculous for me because, again, I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no idea. And it was just, well, here we go. And, man, that first show, you saw the second show ever in New York. The first show was in Atlanta, and just a couple of days prior to the New York show. And I have never been so nervous in my life, backstage ever. Like, even being a 15-year-old kid, first couple of gigs, with your little teenage hardcore band, you know what I mean? Like it 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 was that level of nervousness going on, and it was so weird to feel that way after so many years of doing this. But I walked out, and it was just fine. And the show was great. And then I went to New York, and it was a similar thing. It's like, wow, we're really front loading this tour with some high pressure gigs, because you got the the hometown, or at least the city where you live, because my hometown's DC, but you got the city where you live, you got family and friends on the very first show you've ever done like this. Then you go to the major market of New York, and you try to do it again. But it was fantastic. Those are the hurdles that make life worth living, and especially when you jump over them, you get past them, and it's just like, man, this is awesome. And that's how I felt. And again, that experience repeated itself through the whole country, and culminating with these two sold out shows in Seattle, just I guess it was February 29th. Now, again, it feels like years ago, but it was just this past February 29th. And again, I'm just extremely grateful to the folks who came out, and you know, to the energy they presented. And I look forward to doing it again in Europe, and getting to other territories in the world. I mean, it's a the world seems like it's getting smaller, but when you're actually traveling it's still quite large to get around to everywhere. But I'd love to get to and getting to, not only getting to Europe finally, but also getting to other places. We should talk about Australia and South America and Japan and so on. But it'd be great. And but yeah, I really don't have the words to fully express the gratitude that I felt to all the folks that came out, and to um, the level of respect and attentiveness they brought, to that kind of an intimate experience. It was tremendous. Yeah.
Nice.
Pivotal.
Oh, absolutely. I will say that one thing I really appreciate is we never got to hear William, the storyteller, because you did, curate the set and tell little stories and, certain things. And, in a rock and metal band, it's just sort of like this next song is, and there you go. And Alice especially always kind of lets the music talk, right? Not a lot of,
Mhm.
other than
Right.
thank you, not a lot of chatter there from
Right.
any, but, I really appreciated the storyteller in you
Right on,
because
man.
something you did wonderfully. And I think, I'd love to hear you do that on a live album someday. I think I think that was almost equal to the music was the stories that went with it.
Killer.
Beautiful, man.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I'd love to do a live record of the One Alone tour. We record it every night, um, and I have yet to go through all of those recordings, but they do exist, and yeah, it's something on my mind for sure. You know, like doing putting out some kind of a live document, because again, this whole period has been so special for me. Um, the whole thing from the final decision to go ahead and try to put this record out, to setting up the business infrastructure in order to do that, to then releasing it and then promoting it on tour. And it's just been a ride, man, an incredible ride. And so yeah, documenting that with a live record is yeah, that may be something that happens, you know.
Nice. And maybe with this quiet time, you get to make another, write another batch of songs for us.
Yeah,
Certainly would
yeah,
welcome more records. And I
yeah.
know it was already a kind of a planned break for AIC anyway. Jerry's announced a solo record. Mike is making cover songs of, Thin Lizzy covers on the internet and beating on them with a statue of Philo in his bedroom or something, or his living room. But yeah, I know we were kind of heading into a break for Alice anyway, so this is a
Mhm.
good time for you, hopefully, once we get through all this. And, I just say in closing, I was reflecting, getting ready to do this interview with you, and I was like, man, you've been in Alice over 10 years. And
Been closer to 15. We passed the 14-year mark.
right? And then Black Gives Way to Blue has a big anniversary, right? And
Mhm.
so, I mean, that's a really, it's a testament to you personally, how you came into the band and what the band has done since they've added you, and them and themselves and their own legacy. So I
Mhm.
really appreciate you, and I'm thankful for you and what you brought to the band. And I love this record, this One Alone record. I hope we get more of them.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, for sure, dude. And thank you. Um, yeah, I'm definitely planning to continue releasing music under my own name, and uh, I feel like um, the stage is set to maybe get back into some electric music, um, and maybe pick up where Comes with the Fall left off, because I produced all of those records in the Comes with the Fall catalog. And so um, that sound is something that um, is dear to me, and uh, there's definitely um, a style or a philosophy of how to handle riffs and construction of tracks and things, and um, there's a philosophy around the workflow, and I miss it, and I really want to get back to it in some shape or form. So yeah, I mean, whether it's with that band or not, I don't know, but under my own name for sure, I could definitely see doing electric music that kind of picks up where that catalog leaves off, and hopefully takes it into some different places as well sonically. And but yeah, that's all stuff to look forward to for me, for the future, and hopefully for
Awesome.
everyone else.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I would love to see it, and yeah, it's definitely we'll take whatever we can get, whatever
Right
you'll
on.
bless us with. But thank you so much for your time, William. You've been a champ. I appreciate especially sharing some of these details. Probably not commonly asked about as an artist or just in general. Like I don't know who else cares about this stuff, but I do, and I appreciate you very much for coming along with me on this too.
Thanks very much, Keith. I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right.